A long-time watcher of the channel and a very nice guy, brought in this 67 Bassman, and he said he restored it as best he could after watching many of my videos, which is a hell of a compliment, so thank you. And he just wanted to know if he'd done a good job. So we're going to get in here and find out. But first, just take a look at this thing. It's minty fresh to the point where I thought surely this has got to be a reproduction faceplate at the very least. But looking closer, it all looks legit. It's got the Snowman 8s. I think this is probably just in excellent condition, one of those rare birds that comes in from time to time. Let's take a look inside and see what's going on. Well, I gotta say, after fighting that rust bucket all last week, it's a delight to see something that looks like it might be a week old, but it's not. 67, 67, 67 on the iron. I have high hopes for it. It's got the same red base TAD 6L6GCs that I just put in the other one. It's got what seems to be a new old stock AT7 JJ not Tungesol, Mullard JJ. Let's look under the doghouse together. I took the screws out ahead of time. I've not looked inside yet. Oh, I see good things. So 22s and 100s, F and T's, done like I say. Let me check that voltage, just make sure I'm not about to zap myself on screen for your amusement. No voltage. We're good to proceed. People get on to me because I don't show that in every video. But notice that the leads have these nice curves. I've shown this again and again in videos. That's a very nice thing. You don't want any stress on the lead or where the lead joins the cap. There's a little bitty dab of silicone on the bottom of these because the new caps are smaller. The old rubber strip that used to be in here won't touch, if it's still there, won't make contact. It's gone on this one. But I mean, it's just beautiful stuff. It's got some good metal oxide 1 watts, both for the 220s and the 1K and the 4.7K and the 27K. Now, I'm going to be that guy who puts on the white glove to test if you really dust. Make sure things aren't just swept under the bed, so to speak. All right, the leads of the caps are crimped over and bent before soldering, which means that there's a good mechanical connection there before the solder is even applied. So these are not being held in place by solder. They're being held in place by silicone and by that mechanical clamping. And then the solder, let me line that up better. The solder is just there to provide a good, consistent electromechanical connection for current to flow. And while I have it on this side, let me check the hardware for the transformers is tight. Choke is tight. That's good. Output transformer. Everything so far has been great. I got to tell you, it makes me very happy when people say they watch all my videos and they try to do what they've seen me do, and then I see that they actually have been paying very close attention and they are doing things correctly. So before I flip this over, let me see if the input jacks and speaker jacks are tight. It's another thing I harp on about. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. All right, that one needed a little bit. So the normal channel wasn't quite as tight as the base channel. They're both much tighter than many I see come in. Let's flip this around and do the speaker jacks as well. Just a little bit. Tiny little bit. I can see that little bit of solder there with that bare hole. That tells me that's where that tells me that he has removed the death cap. Let's get this propped up on the bench and take a look inside. Well, overall, everything inside here is just tickety-boo, just really great. I wasn't going to say the guy's name in case I needed to give him a reprimand. No reprimand is needed. It's Scott Wilcox, long-time commenter. He's done a great job. He's got the F&T 100 here. He's replaced the diodes here. He's got a metal oxide here. He's got some half-watt carbon films in the bias supply. He's added the bias level to the bias balance, as I've shown. He did it correctly using all 3 lugs of this, with these two, the center and this one, both grounded to the shell of the casing. It's stock AB165 with one little change. He moved this 100K plate resistor from the yellow to the blue. That takes away some noise in the AB165 because they are doing a DC mixer, and the DC that they're mixing in the stock form is on two different filter nodes, and by moving that, it takes away a big source of noise. There's one thing he missed that I'll point out here, and this goes for all AB165 owners. If you want your amp to sound a little bit better than Leo designed it, Leo's idea of electric bass was that it would sound pretty much like an amplified tuba, and it has this 10 nanofarad cap across this resistor here. If you want to have a more natural high end on your bass guitar, or make this a more usable, less muffled channel for guitar, take out this 10 nanofarad, put it to the side, and move this 500 picofarad from V3A to V1A. It'll roll off a little bit of the highs, not enough to be problematic. This channel will be stable without this 500 picofarad. This amp will be have a lot more natural high end while not being as harsh as without any cap at all. That's an optional thing, but I like it, and most of the clients I've done that for really like it as well. In any AB165 or other Fenders from this era that have the 20 and the 10 nanofarad ceramic disc caps, you need to make sure that they're not microphonic. I'll go through that and check all that stuff. Everything he's done in here is done very, very well. He's got the 3 watt 470 ohms like I use on the screen grids mounted to the side like I recommend. He's got the filament center tap taped off, and he's got the half watt carbon films just like I showed, the 100 ohms going here instead of the chassis. The only thing he's not done what I could consider perfectly, and it may be a limitation of his equipment, and I will certainly do that for him, is he still has all the grounds going to the ground lugs mounted to the transformer bolts, which is how the amp was built. But in time, usually those nuts come loose. Let's see if I can turn them at all. They're tight. I imagine he retightened them not too long ago. So the amp is probably working fine as is. Now, see the main safety ground is kind of loose. I prefer, as I've shown in the video this morning on that rust bucket that was restored, the 66 or early 67, I prefer to solder directly to the chassis like they did in the pre-65 amps. It's a more reliable ground, and it's not going to be affected by any hardware coming loose from a transformer. You know, you still need to make sure your transformer hardware is tight so the transformer doesn't fall out, but you don't want to rely on those for your ground. And I have the proper iron to do a very nice, neat solder joint to chassis. I will ask him if he wants me to do that while the amp is here. It's pretty easy, but that is an iron that not everyone has. And a lot of the irons that people buy in hopes of being able to do it are either not quite up to the task, or they're way too much for the task, and you end up with charred messes where you thought you were going to have solder, etc., etc. I'll check the switches. I'll check that this cap is good. These caps, these 120 picofarads, often drift in value and don't usually do, by this point in time, what they originally were intended to do. I'll test the amp and make sure it's 1,000% good, and I will talk to him about what I consider the benefits normally of converting the phase inverter to AA864, but in this very minty fresh example, he may want to keep it as AB165 and live with just a little bit of hiss. So Scott, man, you're doing a great job here. Proud of you. Thank you very much for paying such close attention to all the things I've put out over the years. Just hats off to you, man. Hats off. This thing's great. Pending some playing tests tomorrow, I expect to have more glowing reports for you. So stay tuned, you guys. You all get to hear this. You'll get to hear this, the other 67 I have, and the Rust Bucket 66, 67 as well. I called it a 66 at the beginning because the transformers were all 66 state codes, but I found a bit on the chassis that said 67. So it's got a non-original volume on the normal channel for those of you playing the home game.